When we think of the Colosseum, we see images of gladiatorial contests, animal hunts and gruesome executions. But what if I told you that on its inauguration, the whole arena was flooded to host a mock naval battle? It was the year 80 AD when the Colosseum, or the Flavian Amphitheater, was completed. It was huge. At various points in history it could hold 50,000 to 80,000 spectators, and to this day it remains the largest freestanding amphitheater. Roman Emperor Titus decided that the opening of this grand structure, which construction was initiated by his late father Emperor Vespasian about 8 years earlier, needed to be celebrated accordingly. He declared 100 days of games. On the first day of the festivities, Titus treated the people to a 24-hour extravaganza with a special event that would put spectators in awe. Following the animal hunt, which kicked off the celebrations, the arena was cleared and water rushed in. Some in the audience started the rumor that a Naumachia, a mock naval battle, would take place. The last spectacle like that was 25 years earlier. Some in the crowd were too young to have seen one. The water continued to fill the arena until it turned into an artificial lake. Let's hear the Roman historian Cassius Dio describing these scenes.
There was a battle between cranes and also between 4 elephants. Animals both tame and wild were slain to the number of 9,000, and women, not those of prominence, however, took part in dispatching them. As for the men, several fought in single combat, and several groups contended together both in infantry and naval battles. For Titus suddenly filled this same theater with water and brought in horses and bulls and some other domesticated animals that had been taught to behave in the liquid element just as on land. He also brought in people in ships who engaged in a sea fight there, impersonating the Corcyraeans and Corinthians.
Dio wrote these words more than 100 years after the events took place, and for centuries scholars have speculated on how the Colosseum was filled with water sufficient for a mock sea battle to take place. The central arena is an ellipse 87 meters long and 55 meters wide. If the depth was 1.5 meters, the volume necessary to flood such a space would be about 5,500 cubic meters of water. It would have been piped from the Arcus Neroniani, a branch of the Aqua Claudia aqueduct. According to various estimates, taken into account the flow of the Claudian aqueduct, the capacity of the distribution tank on the Callian Hill, and the network of pipes, channels and drop shafts of the amphitheater, it would take about an hour to 3.5 hours to fill the arena. Roman poet Martial, who was at the Colosseum that day, claims the arena was flooded and drained seamlessly.
If you are here from a distant land, a late spectator for whom this was the first day of the sacred show, let not the naval warfare deceive you with its ships, and the water like to a sea, here but lately was land. Don't you believe it? Watch while the waters weary Mars. But a short while hence you will be saying, but here lately was sea.
Even with all that water, shipwrights likely constructed flat-bottomed boats to be used instead of real battleships. Such boats would require less volume of water to float and would be easier to maneuver in the restricted space of the arena. And they would be cheaper too. It is possible that they used stationary props. The rapid transition from land to water and back to land at Titus's wish was a remarkable display of the Roman engineers' ingenuity and the emperor's power, all sprinkled with violence and blood. Hundreds of men, mostly convicts, would fight to death in the staged battle. Crowds were ecstatic. Now get this, 2 days later they did it again, just in case you missed the first spectacle. And you wouldn't want to miss it, as Naumachia were quite expensive and challenging to organize, so to see one could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The question remains, how did they get those ships with all the combatants aboard into the flooded arena without letting out the water? Maybe they first placed the ships and men into the arena and then turned the floodgates loose. There is another possibility. Verona has a similar amphitheater, which gives us an idea on how it could have worked at the Colosseum. Underneath the Veronese arena, there's a basin connected to two axial conduits. One was designed to fill the basin, the other to drain water out again into a river. If the Colosseum had a similar basin and dug deep enough, it could have been covered with wooden planks resting on beams and pillars and serving as the floor during other games like animal hunts and gladiatorial fights. And once it was time for Naumachia to begin, it would have been quickly disassembled, revealing the basin with all the boats, props and combatants already in place. Then it could be filled with water, but it could also be filled beforehand. The inauguration of the Colosseum was a massive event that people would talk about for many years. On this occasion, Titus issued a commemorative bronze coin depicting him on the obverse and the Colosseum on the reverse. They probably were distributed to key spectators. These coins were as desirable in antiquity as they are now, and most are found heavily worn, likely because they were held as pocket pieces by the Romans, showing their pride in attending the first games in the Colosseum.